Thank you for joining us for our September 2023 Q&A talk. I am tonight's host, Q&A Talks Program Coordinator, Cody McRae-Cullum. My personal pronouns are he, him, but if you're feeling bold, feel free to address me with my preferred pronouns of royal we. Q&A Talks connects rural parents and caregivers of LGBTQIA+ youth with the resources they need to ensure their children can grow up safely and authentically. Q&A Talks is an initiative of Project Q&A and is made possible by grants from the Independence Area Community Chest and the American Library Association's Libraries Transform Communities focus on rural and small library grant in partnership with the Independence Public Library. Tonight, we are pleased to have Angel Romero. Angel Romero, he, him, his, is Vice President of Resource Development for United Way of Kaw Valley, a nonprofit organization that focuses on building strong, healthy, and equitable communities across Shawnee, Jackson, Jefferson, and Douglas counties in the state of Kansas. He graduated from Washburn University with a bachelor's degree in political science and also went on to earn his law degree from Washburn University. Angel lives in Topeka and enjoys spending time with family, friends, and Buddy the dog. Please welcome Angel Romero.
Well, hey, good evening, everybody. It is so exciting to get to spend some time with you all tonight. I've been looking forward to this all week, really since Cody and I talked about doing this tonight. It's been exciting. Yeah, I have admired the work that Project Q&A is doing. And as I told Cody, their reputation precedes them. And I shared that I was doing this talk. I had some friends and colleagues that said that they were doing good work and noted that work. So it is really exciting to get to be a part of this event today. And so thank you to everyone that's tuning in tonight. Whether you are a parent or an advocate or an educator, thank you for everything you're doing to make a difference in the lives of students and being an advocate for students. So I hope tonight I'm able to share some information that helps you in that role, in those relationships with students. It helps empower you with some more information as we get started tonight. So I'm actually going to go ahead and share my screen because I'm always a believer in having something nice to look at while I'm talking as well. So I think, and I'm going to make sure that I'm sharing that right. So I think you can see a PowerPoint on your screen. Cody, is that displaying right for everyone?
Yep, that beautiful Tetris background. I love that, by the way.
Absolutely. Hey, the 80s are in, so I like Tetris. We're gonna
yes.
We're gonna rock out with that. That is awesome. Well, so I want to do a couple things as we talk tonight. So first I want to talk. We're talking tonight about this idea of youth service and volunteerism, and just why that's important, and how that can really empower the students that you're working with and help those students ultimately make a difference in their life and in the world. I am a firm believer. I am one of those people that has always wanted to change the world, and I really think everybody can. I think everyone has that spark, even from a young age, to really go out and change the world. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So that's pretty exciting, right? We're going to talk about changing the world tonight and how your students can do that. So I need everyone to get excited because it's going to be a lot of fun tonight as we dive into things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is why any of this matters, right? Like, why is youth service important? Why should we care whether students volunteer? What's in it for them? What's in it for us as a community, as a state, that sort of thing. And then I'm going to take a few moments to share my own personal story as a young person who got bitten by the volunteerism and service bug early in life, and what that really enabled me to do and how that really helped me transform my life. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. And then ultimately, I want to talk about, how you can use these resources to help the youth in your life give back to their communities. So as we get started, one of the reasons, of course, when you talk to any young person about doing something, right? Well, they say everyone is doing it. So when we talk about why volunteer, why serve, why is that even important? Well, we can use that same rationale that everybody else is doing it because it's true. We are really, really fortunate in the state of Kansas. This headline is back from 2014, but this stat has been reached multiple times, I know, over the years, where Kansas has ranked either at the top or near the top of states when it comes to youth volunteerism, which in a lot of ways makes sense, right? When we think about Kansas and we think about our, how prone we are to want to give back and to help other people as a state, as a value we have, we like to help our fellow Kansans. That's a value we instill, it turns out, in young people pretty early on. in our state. I love some of these stats from recent years here. About 41% of Kansas youth have volunteered somewhere. That's a recent stat that came out by some agencies that collect and report this information. So 41% of Kansas youth have volunteered somewhere, which is pretty amazing. That means nearly half of Kansas young people are volunteering in some type of way, which is pretty dang cool. There's another study that found that back in 2020, in the midst of this global pandemic that really has, changed people's lives and really kind of shut down life as we know it for a little bit, Kansas actually led the nation in volunteerism as a whole, which includes both adult and youth volunteerism. So even during some of our difficult and most challenging times, Kansans were stepping up to the plate and volunteering and giving back. And I'm sure many of you can remember back to your local communities what life was like back in 2020 and remember those opportunities and people stepping up and helping their friends and neighbors in their community. These volunteer hours, as you can see, in the headline right there were some serious money. This volunteerism, this was from back in 2014. Those youth volunteerism in the state amounted to $1.7 billion in economic impact. That's billion with a B. So when we talk about volunteerism, we're talking about big numbers. To put a really fine point on it, for those folks that are really into stats and numbers, the independent sector, which is an organization that studies and follows trends in volunteerism around the country, they actually rate every year what an hour of volunteer time is worth. They assess an hourly rate to it. And what they found in this most recent year was that 1 hour of volunteerism is worth $30 an hour. So when we talk about volunteering in your communities, giving back to the communities, that has real economic value, and that value adds up pretty quick. When you think about $30 per hour times the number of hours and number of people serving, that adds up pretty quick. So volunteerism does have real value. Again, no, really, everyone is doing it. These are some more stats that came. This was from a study out of the University of Nevada, Reno, that found that annually in the United States, teens are volunteering $2.4 billion, or billion hours, which is worth $34.3 billion to the U.S. economy. So again, we're talking billions with a B. So we're talking a lot of hours, a lot of economic impact in our communities. And what we've seen is it's increasing. Over the last 10 years, and this is looking across the United States, on average, 30% of youth participate in volunteer activities at least once a month, all throughout the United States. And again, that's been an increase we've seen over the last 10 years. So this is happening more and more. What I love too is this stat that talks about 59.3% of youth who volunteer at least 3.5 hours per week. So we're not talking about just one-off kinds of things. We're talking about youth that are putting significant amounts of time into their volunteer hours. What's interesting is when you compare that stat to adults, to people that are over the age of 21 who are volunteering, that average per week is pretty close to what adults are doing as well. So our youth are catching up to us as adults when it comes to volunteering as well. And of course, as some of you can imagine, there are a number of benefits, and these have been studied in lots of different ways about, what the benefits are to young people who volunteer. As Cody mentioned in my intro, I work for a nonprofit organization, so I work for a United Way of Kaw Valley. It's based here in Topeka. We are an organization that thrives off of volunteers, including student volunteers. So we know as nonprofits that, of course, volunteers provide a huge benefit to us. Our work would not happen in lots of ways without the work of volunteers. But what people forget sometimes is that volunteerism provides just as many benefits to yourself as it does to others and to the organizations that you're serving. So you can see some stats that are up there. We talk about risky behaviors when we talk about things like abusing alcohol and drugs or other destructive behaviors. Youth who volunteer at least 1 hour or more a week are half as likely as other youth to engage in some of of those risky behaviors. So when we talk about making some of those poor decisions, volunteerism is able to put a big dent in the number of students that we know participate in those behaviors. Of course, we also know that youth who volunteer are more likely to do well in school. They're more likely to be engaged in school activities. They're more likely to get better grades, to pursue more rigorous, tougher academic courses in school. They're likely to stay more focused on their schoolwork. So we know there's a number of benefits for students' academic performance as well. And one of the other things that I love too is there's some tremendous health benefits to volunteerism for young people as well. There's actually a study recently that found, and they're doing more research on this now, about really how volunteerism impacts the brain. And what they found recently is that volunteerism unlocks some of the same serotonin, some of the same kind of happiness chemicals that we find from other activities that give us joy and give us pleasure as well. What I love, we've heard a lot about mental health in youth and the impact that different things have had on the mental health of youth, and there's a lot of focus on that right now. What we found in a recent study is that kids who volunteer are 34% more likely to be in excellent or good health. Which is amazing. So when we talk about those mental health benefits, kids who volunteer 34% more likely to be in excellent or good health. We see reductions in anxiety as well. We see that students are 25% less likely to have anxiety than their peers who don't volunteer. Again, owing back to those mental health benefits, that sense of purpose and those things that volunteerism are able to foster for students. And of course, college admissions, right? We're all thinking about the end game and what students want to do after they graduate high school, whether that's going on to a 4-year institution, a 2-year institution, entering technical education, whatever that looks like. We know that there's a more competitive field than ever to enter institutions. And so colleges and scholarship review boards are looking more and more about how do they help differentiate students in an increasingly competitive world. One of the ways they found to do that is look at students who volunteer, who give back to their community in some way. That's a sign of a student's commitment, of a student's dedication, of their sense of service to their communities. And so more and more volunteerism activities are a way for applicants to be able to differentiate themselves when it comes to scholarships, when it comes to college admissions, and that sort of thing. When it comes to thinking about the future as well, volunteering is also a good way for students to think about what they might want to be when they grow up. So students might be able to pursue volunteer opportunities that are related to a future career that they want to be a part of. It might allow them to shadow professionals that are in that field. It can let them get a sense of what it's like to work in that job or in that opportunity. So it really lets them kind of get an idea of what that career, kind of do some career exploration as well. So volunteerism can serve a number of purposes when it comes to helping students get ready for the future. It's also a way, this was true for myself as well, it helps you build marketable skills. The number of things that I could think of, and I'll talk about more in a minute, that you learn from volunteerism, it's almost immeasurable. When it comes to communications, to event planning, as Cody and I were just talking beforehand, that ability to be flexible, to plan events, to communicate, to organize, to show leadership, all those are things that you don't necessarily get taught in a classroom, but they do happen through those extracurriculars, through those kinds of volunteer opportunities. The other thing I want to touch on too is that there are some benefits that are unique to the LGBTQ plus community when it comes to volunteerism as well. One of the biggest things that volunteerism does is it gives you a sense of empowerment. It helps people find a cause or passion that they believe in. It helps people feel like they can make a difference in a particular area. For youth, it's a way to build confidence and help them find their confidence. Help them find a way where they might not have otherwise been able to before, help them find a way that they can fit in and help them find their place in an area where they might not have been able to do so before. It also provides opportunities for students to be involved in other organizations that are helping LGBT plus Q plus youth in their communities. It allows them to give back to help other students as well. So there are a number of opportunities or benefits specifically for students in the community that that also that are unique to them and also helps them. It's also an opportunity for many youth in the LGBTQ plus community to network, to find other people like them that they may not have otherwise been able to do before. So there's so many opportunities that are unique specifically to this population. The next thing I wanted to touch on is, of course, we've talked about all the benefits of volunteering, why it's good, what research and what science is showing out there. What I also want to tell you too, and it's something that I'm sure a lot of you probably know already, is that youth across the state of Kansas are doing big things through their volunteer efforts. We could spend all day talking about amazing volunteer projects that students are leading across the state, but there's just a couple that I pulled out here that I'll touch on. This first project, we'll talk about this in more detail in just a moment, but this is a project of the Kansas Association for Youth, which is a leadership and service organization that I'll talk about more in a moment, but they've partnered with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas to offer students the chance to pursue these Be the Spark grants. And these are grants that students write, so students actually write the grants themselves, they find the resources, they apply, they do all that work themselves to build projects that are going to impact the health of other students in their community. And so we've seen over $150,000 granted out to students across the state of Kansas through these projects, and these students have done pretty amazing things. You see some pictures on the screen right here. We've got up in that upper left-hand corner there, we've got out in Marysville, they built a story walk for parents and their children to be able to engage in opportunities to read and listen to stories together in an outdoor environment. Up there in the upper right, that was out in Cunningham. They built actually an outdoor classroom for students to be able to sit in class and take classes, but to do so in an outdoor setting. Down there in that lower left, that was a new playground that was just opened in Halstead. And down there in the lower right, that really fun picture down there, that was out in Goddard, a color run that their KAY club was able to sponsor out there. So those are just a fraction of the projects that, again, students wrote for, students made these happen, and they're making an impact on the health of students across their communities. So some really tremendous things that are happening just within that project. This is something we saw right here in my hometown here in Topeka, the Topeka Youth Commission. We're starting to see these kind of youth councils, youth commissions pop up in other communities across the state. But what these are essentially groups of young people who sometimes they're modeled after their local city government, or sometimes they're part of an economic development group. But it's basically ways for students to be able to make a difference in their community, to be able to take charge of an issue that helps move their community forward. So in Topeka, this Topeka Youth Commission's been active in lots of different ways. Their whole goal is to really give students a voice in city government and city development. They created something called the Stay 785 program. Of course, our zip code up here, our area code up here in Topeka 785. And so these grants go to organizations, programs that are run by other youth that help promote Topeka and help promote Shawnee County. So they're getting to grant out thousands of dollars to other young people in their community who are taking on these projects, which is pretty amazing to watch. And they funded some pretty amazing projects throughout the community. It's really a great way for students to get to know each other and to explore their community. We also saw this summer, this was the Kansas Youth Empowerment Academy. I love this, the Youth Empowerment Academy. This is a program of the Youth Leadership Forum. The Youth Leadership Forum is a statewide organization here in Kansas, and it's an opportunity for students with disabilities to gather together to learn leadership skills, to be able to do mentorships, to be able to support other students like themselves that have disabilities throughout the state of Kansas. And so Kansas Youth Empowerment Academy does some really tremendous work, and one of their programs you can see on the screen is the Youth Leadership Forum. So Youth Leadership Forum being a program of the Youth Empowerment Academy. So this forum happens here in Topeka, and it's a chance for those students to get together, and as I mentioned, they learn leadership skills, they learn how to advocate for themselves in the state capitol, how to advocate for other folks with disabilities, they learn how to develop mentorship programs, programs and other things. And again, the other important thing about this is that it's all student-led, it's all student-driven. And so even as you see in that picture, the student delegates that gathered this summer were learning how to then go back to their communities and lead change and make big things happen in their communities. So these are just a couple examples of youth that are being able to step up and have opportunities to volunteer in their own communities. So the talk, I always love showing this picture. So I've owned it over the years. We're going to talk about my story of youth service. And so you can see right there, that is a much younger Angel. That is a 14-year-old Angel in that picture. I was rocking some kind of mustache there, y'all. That mustache started when I was about 12 years old, and it continued for a good couple years. And it's hard to tell. I also had braces in that picture. There was a lot going on for young Angel at that time in my life. And I show that picture only because, it kind of represents where I was at that point in my life. I'm a military brat. And so we were kind of moving around all over the place. So I wasn't attached. I didn't have a hometown per se. And so we ended up in the Fort Riley, Junction City area when all was said and done. And so that's where that picture was taken. So I was, kind of this shy kid. I really loved school, but I kind of kept to myself. I didn't have a ton of friends. I didn't, reach out to other people a lot. And I really struggled to kind of know what my thing was, what my niche was, and where I kind of fit in. And I didn't really know what my passion was. I wasn't a sports kid. I had tried different kinds of arts and music, theater kind of things, and those weren't really my jam. And so we're trying to figure out what is my thing? What do I really love to be involved with? One thing I knew that I loved doing was volunteering, and I loved helping other people. And so I kind of always wonder, I'm like, well, what can I do with that, right? Like, what can I do with this ability that I had to just, love on people and help other people? It turns out there's actually quite a lot of power in that. And it led me to the Kansas Association for Youth and how Cody and I's story would eventually intersect. So I mentioned KAY earlier. They're an organization that makes possible those Be the Spark grants that you saw earlier in conjunction with Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas. So KAY is an organization that's part of the Kansas State High School Activities Association. It's a club that's available in middle schools and high schools throughout the state of Kansas. And it is a leadership training service organization that also works on helping students build and develop character. One of the great things about KY is that it's open to everyone, to every student. There's no prerequisite to be a part of the KY club at all. And so I knew that I liked helping other people. I knew that I liked volunteering. My school, Fort Riley Middle School, had a KY club. And so I went up to them and said, hey, I would like to join. And before I knew it, they said, okay, great. And so I was helping to get to coordinate volunteer projects and getting to help live out those things I always knew I wanted to do. At the time that I joined, so I joined when I was in 7th grade at Fort Riley Middle School, I had no idea the journey that KY really would take me on in my life. One of the things that's unique about KY, there are objectives and privileges to the KY organization. So the KY organization has objectives like leadership and service and recreation and enthusiasm and responsibility. And they have privileges like to love and be loved, to seek the truth, to appreciate and respect all races. And KY is unique. There is no other organization in the state of Kansas like KAY. And what KAY helped me realize is that there is power in service and in volunteerism and giving back to other people. And as I started becoming involved in KAY, it really helped me build my confidence. It allowed me to realize I really do have something to contribute. I do have something to give back. I was able to take on leadership roles. I was able to serve as an area president. So KAY divides the state into 6 areas. And so they elect a student that gets to be the leader for that area. And so I was the Area 3 area president, just as Cody, I know, was an area president as well in KAY. And that was a tremendous boost to my confidence and my skill set too. All the skills I got to learn. Absolutely. Yeah, I was going to say, I know it's something that Cody would agree with. And as you can see in those pictures, it's an organization that I'm still active with to this day. I still serve on the camp staff. I serve on the alumni board of the organization. It's an organization that is still a big part of what I do today. And just as a note, there are several KAY clubs at schools throughout Southeast Kansas. I know at Erie, there's one. Down in Independence, there's one. Cherryvale, there's a couple of different schools in Southeast Kansas that do have KAY clubs, and they're open for students in grades 6 through 12 that can be a part of them. The other thing that KAY did was it started a chain reaction for me, because as I talked about earlier, I kind of got bit by the service bug. And so, once I got involved in KAY, it started begetting other things in my life that I could be involved with. And so it took on other opportunities. We in Junction City had a youth commission, like I mentioned earlier, Topeka has. Our youth commission was a junior form of our city government. And so it was designed with the intent of giving students that opportunity to be a voice for students in their community. So I had the opportunity, you can see this picture here back with former Governor Sebelius. That mustache is still there. It hung on for a couple more years at this point. But I had the opportunity to work with our youth commission that helped pass a state law at that time, which was a pretty incredible experience at the age of about 14, 15, to get to have the opportunity to do that. My work on the Youth Commission then, of course, led to other boards and other committees that I got invited to be a part of in our city because they wanted to have youth input in those kinds of things. And so I got the opportunity to be involved in those kinds of efforts. And of course, that began even more connections for me, helped me build my skill set. That's where I learned how to speak in public, how to advocate for things, because I had numerous opportunities to do so throughout that time. And again, all this stemmed because I had the opportunity to reach out to the KAY organization and say, hey, I want to be involved. It just started with that one organization, that one connection, and it led to so much more. So we're going to talk about in a moment about starting small and starting with one thing. And that's really all it takes. So all those different things I had the chance to be involved with, we could talk about the Youth Commission, we could talk about, my work with the Spirit Squad and student government and with communities and schools and so many other things I got to be involved with in school. And it all stemmed from this spark that really got ignited with the KAY organization. And then, of course, once you're hooked, you're in, right? It's like the mafia. Like once you're in, the volunteer mafia, like once you're in, you're in. So then I decided to go to college at Washburn University. I decided to become an Ichabod. And so, by the time I graduated high school, this service thing, like I mentioned, I was hooked on it. And so I wanted to keep it going. So what turns out, first off, what I should mention is that my entire college career was paid for by scholarships, my undergraduate career. A lot of those scholarships came as a result of my volunteer service. So as a result of the connections I made, the skills I developed, and the kinds of involvement I got to have, that stood out to scholarship committees. So I actually had enough scholarships to pay for all of my undergrad, which was pretty amazing. And again, that stemmed from that volunteer service and those skills I built. So once I started college, I got the opportunity to do things like student government. So I got the opportunity to lead canned food drive competitions. I was an AmeriCorps member, which you can see in that one picture there on the right. So AmeriCorps is a federal service program that allows college students and older to be involved in federal service programs. It actually provides to college students a stipend for the volunteer service that they engage in. So there's some really neat opportunities through AmeriCorps that I got to take advantage of. I was a student ambassador. I was a resident assistant, an RA in the residence halls. These are all roles that I wouldn't have been able to take on had it not been for the volunteer service I've done and all that experience I had leading into it. And of course, these things start to snowball, right? So through all these roles in college, I added to that toolbox, to those marketable skills I talked about earlier. So that event planning we talked about, that ability to coordinate with other organizations. One of the really unique things about Topeka, about Washburn University is we have a really close symbiotic relationship with the city of Topeka. So Washburn is a municipal university, a municipal college, so we are really linked to our community. So the more I got active on campus, the more I had the chance to get active and be involved in the Topeka community as well. And so, of course, you know what happens once you get on one board or one committee, people learn about you. And if you have the tendency to say yes, people love it even more. And so you become even more connected to organizations and to opportunities in the community. So it spread off campus and it spread into the Topeka community as well. The other thing, and you'll find this in Topeka and you'll find this at other cities around the state and around the country, is that cities are really hungry for young people to be a part of them, to volunteer, to be active in their efforts, because young people represent new energy, new ideas, new perspectives. And so Topeka, I was really fortunate because Topeka was hungry to have youth engagement. And so when I wanted to be involved in things, they said, yes, absolutely. And in many cases, they sought me and my peers out because they really genuinely wanted to have student input and have students involved with their efforts. And that's not only true in Topeka, I think you'll find that anywhere, especially I will say in rural communities. Rural communities really want their young people to stay there, to make a difference in their communities. And so it's never been, I think, a better time than ever to be a young person who wants to give back and serve, because communities are hungry for students that want to give back. And of course, ultimately, my volunteer service led to some of my future career choices as well. After 4 years at Washburn, I decided to stick around for 3 more and get my law degree. And that really helped me marry this passion I had for helping other people and wanting to make a difference in the world. Because you remember, I still want to do that. So I got to law school and said that's what I want to do. And so I got to marry that passion with my professional aspirations and being able to get that professional training and knowledge and that sort of thing. And all of that, of course, led to my current role that I'm in right now at United Way of Caw Valley, where I really feel like I have this dream job and really the best job in the world, because my job now is all about serving other people. I had no idea that was a career when I started this. When I was in 7th grade and signed up to join KAY, I had no idea that I could actually one day get paid to work for an organization that actually helps serve other people. The other fun thing about this story, because again, remember, we're thinking about also, what's in it for the student as well. You build some amazing connections through volunteer service, and the world works in funny ways. My first job right out of law school was actually working for a state agency. One of the people who interviewed me at that state agency was the wife of a faculty member at Washburn that I got to work with as a result of my volunteer efforts. And the other person who would end up being my boss, she got to know me because her husband was a faculty member and knew me through my community service activities throughout the community. And so those kinds of things help my reputation kind of precede me in those aspects. Before I started working at United Way, I was actually a volunteer. So I volunteered a lot for United Way. And one day the person that had my job before me was leaving, and he said, hey, I think you might enjoy doing this for a living. And it turns out to be the best decision I ever made, and haven't looked back since. So, I continue every single day to benefit from the choices I made in giving back to help other people in their community. And it all started because I walked into Mrs. Barnes's classroom in 7th grade and said, I want to know more about this KY organization, and I want to be a part of it. So I consider myself so fortunate that every day I get to wake up and have a career and have other opportunities that were made possible because I made that decision to serve and volunteer and give back to others. So I want to talk in these last couple minutes here really about, how the young people in your lives can start their own journey of service. I don't have any special powers or anything like that. There's nothing that makes me unique in that sense. I took advantage of opportunities, and other people can do the same thing. So I made this point earlier, but I can't say it enough. You don't have to change the world overnight. Help students start small. think about where they're at right now. Remember, part of volunteerism, part of service is helping students and young people figure out what they care about and what connects to that passion. Because you're going to enjoy yourself the most and you're going to get the most fulfillment when your passion, when that student's passion connects to the opportunity that they're doing. So you don't have to feel like your student needs to sign up for 10 activities right away. They can and should maybe start with just one organization. So I'll give you kind of a tool, an exercise you can use to help students in that regard. So this activity, and you could of course adapt this and that sort of thing for the student you're working with, but it's really just a simple kind of mapping exercise. So I encourage you, you can draw a circle in the middle of a piece of paper and write that student's name in the middle of the paper. And then what I'll invite you to do is to have that student draw kind of spokes from a hub on that piece of paper. And in those other circles, write things that they like to do, write passions, hobbies, interests that they have. You can see on the screen, those are just some examples. They might like helping other people. They might like animals. We know some students really are into working with animals or liking animals. They might like playing video games, and I encourage them to write that down. If that's something they're passionate about, write that, make note of that. Maybe they like to read. That's something they should write down too. Think about everything that they could be interested in. Have them put those things in those circles. This is just an example I have on the screen right here. You don't have to have all these circles. Again, this is just an example. Now, once they've done that, what I invite you to do is go through those circles and think about what kind of connections you can make. So if that student likes helping other people, well, does their school have a service club like K's or Scoopgo or Key Club, or those organizations that offer volunteer service opportunities? If they're into animals, is there a local animal shelter they can be involved with that they can volunteer with? If they like reading, local libraries often have volunteer opportunities for students to be a part of. And so I encourage you to contact them. If they're into art, there's many communities that have local nonprofit arts organizations, or they have galleries or theaters that might need volunteers. Maybe they love history. There are local historical organizations or museums sometimes in communities that are in need of volunteers. One of my favorites, so people think about, what can I make with playing video games? Well, it turns out video games can take you lots of places nowadays. There are more and more schools that have these esports clubs or esports leagues, and you can sometimes even find them online, which is ways you can play, video games and compete kind of competitively with other students in your area or around the state. There is even, esports scholarships now you can earn to different universities. So playing video games can pay off in lots of different ways nowadays. Are there mentor opportunities they can be a part of? Can they perhaps be a big brother or big sister for someone, and they use that video game hobby to play video games and connect with their little through that organization? So again, it's starting small, looking at that one thing that people can be a part of and how to make those connections for them. And lastly, I'll just share some resources. School counselors, guidance counselors are amazing resources to connect students. They can be a wealth of information about school and community resources. So encourage you to talk to those folks. Local 4-H offices in your communities. 4-H itself is, of course, a great way for students to serve and volunteer. But 4-H offices are also connected to other community organizations. And so they tend to have a really good knowledge base of other things going on in the city, so they're great folks to reach out to. Your local library, believe it or not, libraries, people kind of forget, libraries at their core, they are sources of information. And so you can go to ask librarians, I want to be involved, I want to volunteer. Do you know how I find that information in our community? So libraries are more than just books, they're also for finding information in your community. So I encourage you to do that. Volunteerkansas.org, that's that sort of centralized database of volunteer opportunities. They have a really cool website where you can search by community on there and find volunteer opportunities all around the state of Kansas. And you can do that at that volunteerkansas.org. Of course, I'll put in a little ninja plug for Project Q&A and other organizations in the LGBTQ community that would, of course, love volunteers of any age, including student volunteers, to help with events. I'll also put in a plug for 211, which is actually a program of United Way. So 211 is a hotline. It's a free hotline that's operated all throughout the state and actually all throughout the United States. That's manned 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. And people can call 211 to get connected to resources. And that includes volunteer opportunities. So someone can call and say, hey, I live in Coffeyville and I'm really interested in volunteering. What does that look like? And they'll connect you either to specific opportunities or to a place where you can then find those opportunities in your community. So that 211 hotline is a fabulous resource for local communities. I end with this quote. When people think about, what volunteerism has to look like, it doesn't have to be these huge acts of service, I think, that some folks think about. It's one of my favorite quotes here from Margaret Mead, that never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. So it's taking those small steps to make a difference that can lead to really big things happening in our community. So once again, I have been so excited to get to share this time with you that went by so quickly today. But you've got information on the screen there. I would love to connect with you digitally if you have more questions or things like that. And of course, I think we've got some time as well to take any questions if folks have those.
All right, thank you so much. Such an informative talk about such an important, vital topic for our young people. And I appreciate all of the memories as well. I don't think I ever got to see the mustache because we met when you were at camp several years later, but it was definitely my loss to not get to see you rocking that mustache as a youth.
Oh, that's awesome. It really was something, I tell you what.
Yeah. Yep. All righty. So thank you to all who tuned in and our partners at the Independence Public Library and our funding sources, the Independence Area Community Chest and the American Library Association. Thank you to Angel Romero for a wonderful presentation. If you would like to continue the conversation with Angel on Zoom, follow the link in the comments, please. Be sure to tune in next month for our Q&A talks. We will be speaking with Stephanie Rash on Wednesday, October 18th, who will be discussing vocational opportunities open to young people, specifically the non-traditional route in the way of not the university route. If you would like to find out more about Project Q&A, our work, or to view past Q&A talks, please visit our website and follow us on social media. To support the work we are doing in rural communities, please consider making a tax-deductible donation today. Thank you for watching our Q&A talk this month. And if you have any questions for our presenter, please again follow the link in the comments to join us on Zoom. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.